Describe an occasion when you lost something important to you. You should say what you lost, how you lost it, why it was important to you, and explain how you felt about it.
I'd like to talk about a time when I misplaced my Apple AirPods, which were really valuable to me. It was about a year ago. I was on my way home from work, listening to music as usual. When I got off the bus, I quickly put the earbuds in my pocket. Or at least I thought I did. Later that evening, when I wanted to use them again, I realized they weren't where I expected. I searched through all my stuff, my bag, my jacket pockets, even around the house. But they had disappeared. That's when it hit me that they must have fallen out during the bus ride. I contacted the bus company to check if anyone had handed them in, but unfortunately, no one had. The next day, I even revisited the bus stop, hoping I might find them lying around, but no luck there either. These AirPods were incredibly important to me because I use them daily, not just for listening to music, but also for taking work calls and tuning into podcasts. They were quite pricey as well, so losing them felt like a real setback. I had gotten so used to the convenience of wireless headphones that switching back to my old wired ones was a bit of a hassle. I was really frustrated with myself for being so careless. At first, I felt a mix of disappointment and annoyance, but over time, I just accepted it. Eventually, I bought a new pair, but since then, I've been a lot more careful about keeping track of my belongings. That experience definitely taught me to be more mindful.
Describe your ideal house. You should say where it is, what it looks like, when you would like to live in, and explain why you would like to live in it.
Well, if I could design my dream home, it would definitely be in the heart of the city, right near a large park. I've always loved the idea of having nature nearby while still enjoying the convenience of city life. So, this place would be in a central location, but with easy access to greenery and open spaces. I'd go for something simple and minimalist, maybe inspired by Japanese architecture. I've always admired the clean lines and the way everything feels calm and organized in that style. The house wouldn't be too big, just enough space to feel comfortable but not overwhelming. I'd want lots of natural light, large windows, and a connection between the indoor and outdoor spaces, like a small garden or courtyard where I could relax and unwind. The design would focus on practicality, without too much clutter, making it both peaceful and functional. In terms of when I'd like to move in this house, well, I'd say as soon as possible, really. Maybe within the next few years, once I've saved enough. I think it would be the perfect place to settle down after reaching some of my personal goals. The reason I'd love to live in a home like this is because it combines the best of both worlds, being close to the city center, with all the shops and entertainment options nearby, but also having a tranquil environment to escape to. Plus, the minimalist design would help create a stress-free atmosphere, which is exactly what I'd need after a long day.
Describe something in your study work that has made you feel confident. You should say when it happened, what it was, why it made you feel confident, and explain how you felt about it.
One thing that really boosted my confidence was when I was preparing for my final exam in college, specifically in a real estate investing course. This happened during my last semester, a few weeks before the exam. I had struggled a lot with managing my time effectively in the past, which often left me feeling stressed. However, this time I decided to approach things differently. I started by creating a clear study schedule that balanced my revision and personal time. I broke down the course into smaller, manageable sections and dedicated time each day to focus on key concepts like market analysis, investment strategies, and financial projections. Not only that, but I also joined a study group where we discussed tricky topics and exchanged ideas, which helped clarify areas I was unsure about. The reason this experience gave me such a confidence boost was because, for once, I felt fully in control of my preparation. In the past, I would cram last minute, and it always left me anxious. But this time, I knew I was on top of things. When I walked into the exam room, I wasn't panicking or second-guessing myself like I usually would. I felt ready. By the time I finished the exam, I felt a huge sense of relief and pride. I knew I had done my best. A few weeks later, when I got the results, I found out I had scored one of the highest marks in the class. That moment not only made me proud, but it also taught me the value of proper time management and planning. Now, whenever I'm faced with a challenge, I feel a lot more self-assured because I know how to handle it better.
Describe a sport that you only have watched before but had not played by yourself. You should say what it is, when you watched it, where you watched it, who you watched it with, and explain how you felt about it.
Basketball is a sport I've often enjoyed watching, but never actually played myself. The first time I really got into watching it was during the NBA Finals a few years back. It was around mid-June, and the games were broadcast live on TV. I remember watching it at home in our living room. My brother, who's quite the basketball enthusiast, invited me to watch the final game with him. He thought it would be more exciting to have someone else to share the experience with, and he wasn't wrong at all. We had some snacks ready and were both geared up in front of the television, excited to see the outcome. The energy of the game was electric. There's something about the pace of basketball. It's really fast-moving, and the players are incredibly skilled, doing all these impressive dribbles and jumps. And even though you're watching through a screen, the atmosphere pulls you right in. The crowd's going wild, the buzzer sounds, players are hustling. It's almost like you can feel the energy buzzing through the air. Honestly, I felt quite thrilled watching it. Even though I wasn't playing, the constant lead changes and tight scores kept me on the edge of my seat. It's a dynamic game, and you can't help but feel a part of the action. That night, I really got why people are so passionate about basketball. I learned a lot about the game, like the rules and some strategies, which made it even more interesting. So yeah, watching basketball turned out to be really engaging, and it was great bonding time with my brother too.
Describe a new law that you want to implement in your country. You should say what law it is, what changes this law has, whether this new law will be popular, and explain how you came up with the idea of this law.
Well, if I had the chance to introduce a rule in Vietnam, I'd definitely go for one that targets littering. You know, it really bothers me how some streets and parks are just covered in trash. So, I'd propose a strict penalty for anyone caught throwing garbage in public places. Instead of just telling people not to do it, there'd be a hefty fine to really make them think twice. This regulation would work by setting up fines that are big enough to deter people from littering. For instance, tossing a small piece of paper might land you a fine, but throwing away something larger, like a soda can, would result in an even higher penalty. I think the key here is to make the consequences tough enough to encourage people to keep their trash until they can dispose of it properly. Now, about whether this law would be welcomed, I guess it might not be popular at first. People generally don't like being told what to do, especially if it hits their wallet. But over time, I believe attitudes would change. As places start looking cleaner and more inviting, I think people would start seeing the benefits. The idea for this rule came to me during a visit to Singapore. It's amazing how clean it is there. They have similar laws and it works wonders. I thought to myself, why not try something like this back home? It could really help improve the environment and make our public spaces more pleasant for everyone. So yeah, that's the law I'd love to see in place.
Describe a prize you have received. For example, a medal, money, or something valuable. You should say what it was, when you received it, what you did to receive it, and explain how you felt about it.
There's a memorable moment in my life when I was awarded with a medal after finishing my first marathon. To be honest, it's one of the accomplishments I'm most proud of. This happened around a year ago, after nearly 2 years of on and off training. It wasn't an easy journey, but in the end, it was all worth it. To give a bit of background, I was never much of a runner, to be fair. But a couple of years ago, I decided to take on a new challenge, something I'd never really done physically before. I started with baby steps, working on my fitness and gradually building up my strength and stamina. At first, it was just short runs around my neighborhood, nothing too intense. But as time went on, I pushed myself further and further. And little by little, I found myself able to go longer distances without feeling completely exhausted, which was a huge win for me. After a while, I gained enough confidence to sign up for a marathon. The day of the event was tough, especially in the last stretch when my legs felt incredibly heavy. But somehow, I just kept going and eventually crossed the finish line. When they handed me the medal, it was such a surreal feeling. It's hard to describe the emotions I felt at that point. On one side, I was completely worn out, physically and mentally, but on the other, I was absolutely thrilled. The feeling of having achieved something so big was incredible. You know, all the early morning runs, the effort, and the times when I almost gave up. It all paid off in the end. For me, that medal is more than just a physical item. It stands for persistence and reminds me that no matter how tough things get, if you stay committed to your goals, you can reach them.